Good afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are. Thank you for signing in with us. So glad to have you. I'd like to just take a few minutes and first of all, I'm Jim Gavin with the Center for Human Relations and Community Studies along with Marilyn Aziz, and we're welcoming the team. So Judith, Fred, and Veronique. So let me just say a few words to introduce our guests this evening, and then we'll let them take it away. I promise Fred and Judith I won't do the emotional introductions. So just kind of bland, factual introductions, but nonetheless. So first of all, Fred Miller, whom I define as a hopeful man. A hopeful man. Fred is the CEO and lead strategist of the Khalil Jameson Consulting Group, which was named one of Consulting Magazine's 7 Small Jewels, a pioneering change agent, thought leader in the field of organization development, cited as a forerunner of corporate change in the classic book, The Age of Heretics. Fred has way too many awards to be cited in this brief introduction. One example, he's been named one of the 40 pioneers of diversity by Profiles in Diversity Journal. He is author of more than 100 articles in professional journals. Fred was managing editor of the classic, The Promise of Diversity, and he has co-authored with Judith Katz, whom I'll introduce in a moment, the following books, and this may not be all of them. So from the most current backwards, Safe Enough to Soar, Accelerating Trust, Inclusion, and Collaboration in the Workplace with Judith, 2018, Opening Doors to Teamwork and Collaboration, 4 Keys That Change Everything, and we had a sample of that in our last session. And Be Big, Step Up, Step Out, Be Bold. I think that speaks miles for both you and Judith. And that was a 2008. And The Inclusion Breakthrough, Unleashing the Real Power of Diversity, 2002. Fred was the first person to serve on all 3 boards of the most prestigious organizations in his field, the Association for Talent Development, ATD, Organization Development Network, and National Training Labs. He is a hopeful man, a hopeful man, especially viewed through the lens of the US of A over the past 50 years, and there's so much more, but time passes quickly. Judith Katz. So if Fred is a hopeful man, Judith is a passionate woman. After a career in academia, Judith joined the Khalil Jameson Consulting Group in 1985, currently serves as the executive VP. Judith is known for boundless energy, sharp analytical mind, distinguished herself as a thought leader, practitioner, educator, strategist for more than 40 years. She's created new paradigms in organization development and pioneered cutting-edge approaches to white awareness, inclusion, the leveraging of differences, covert processes, and strategic change. Judith's writing has broken new ground in OD and other fields. Her landmark book, White Awareness, Handbook for Anti-Racism Training, Guest the Year, 1978, was the first systematic training program to address racism from a white perspective. Her courageous autobiographical work, No Fairy Grandmothers, No Magic Wands, The Healing Process After Rape, was among the first to assist rape survivors in the recovery process. In the field of inclusion, she and Fred are renowned for their foundational work. She also co-created the Covert Process Concept and Lab with Bob Marshak. She has led innumerable transformative change initiatives around the globe, organizations such as Allstate, Ecolab, Eileen Fisher, Merck, City of San Diego, United Airlines, Telecoms of Singapore. And this last line from her bio, I just have to read that colleagues and clients sing her praises for her generosity, her humility, her approachability, her sense of humor, and her resolute commitment to partnering with all people so they can step fully into their own personal power. So join me in welcoming Fred and Judith. I'm sorry I don't have your bio, Veronica. Next time I will. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Marilyn. Thanks for arranging this and having us back. You're such wonderful partners. Greatly appreciate it. Tara Whittle, one of the other members of our firm, is on there on Zoom. I don't know if she's going to be talking, but she's here to support us, and she's a wonderful partner. And thank you for those who are returning and been with us before, and welcome to the people joining us for the first time. We really appreciate it. It's nice to have a dialogue with people as we go through these incredible times that we're living in. We're the Khalil Jameson Consulting Group, as Jim said. We're a management consulting firm. This is for the people who are new joining us for the first time. We have a national, international reputation around inclusion and diversity. We're probably one of the first firms, if not the first, to say the word inclusion and to try to bring that to the way that organizations are thinking about issues, and not just the diversity part, but also the inclusion part. Our firm's been around for 51 years, founded by a woman since deceased named Khalil Jameson. There are 10 of us who work in the Troy office. This is Troy, New York, in the United States, out there. There are 10 of us who work out of the Troy office, and then we're administrative and project people, and then we have about 25 consultants who are basically in the United States, but all over the globe. And it's an honor and a privilege to work and talk about some of the exciting things that we're working on and thinking about, and I really want to appreciate you for joining us for this period of time. And Judith, do you want to say hi, and then please?
Sure, but I think Jim said it all, so I'll just say hi. I'm in Washington, D.C. It's good to see you, and I've gotten a couple of messages from people that I've known for many, many years, so thank you for joining us today as well. And people that I don't know, I'm looking forward to being with you and engaging with you today. So welcome to my kitchen, and I'm looking forward to engaging with everybody. So Veronique, why don't you say a few words?
Hi everyone, I'm Veronique. I work with the Khalil Jameson Consulting Group for about 8 or 9 months now, going on a year. I'm a client partner, so I work with numerous some of our clients, but I'm also supporting Fred and Judith tonight, just running this session. If you have any questions at all throughout the session, please feel free to use the chat. We'll be sending out a recording of this session afterwards, and also the presentation you'll see tonight. So thank you so much for being here with us.
And why don't you tell people what's happening in your life so we all can give you energy going forward?
Of course, Fred always brings us up, but I am 9 months pregnant, so I'm going out on maternity leave very shortly. Yay!
Energy for her, yay!
Thank you.
Yay. She said 9 months. Did you hear that? 9 months? That's a significant number. I'm not sure why, but it's a significant number. So going forward, so one, thank you for joining us. If you're off camera, if you could come on camera, that'd be great. If you don't want to, that's also fine, but we like seeing faces. It's always delightful, and it's also helpful as we talk and present to see people's faces. We probably should go to the PowerPoint. So this is Safe Enough to Soar. This is a book that Judith and I wrote a couple of years ago. And it really, I'll say a little bit more about it later, but mainly it comes out of the fact that we were working with many leaders who we felt were good people, and they were good people, and yet people in the organization weren't speaking up, weren't bringing their voice to the organization or their wisdom to the organization. And one of our leaders said, I don't know why people don't talk to me or interact with me. I've never actually had somebody go out in the courtyard and be shot or anything, but yet they're treating me like I'm dangerous or not going to be good. And so we start thinking about what needs to happen in the organization for people to speak up, for people to feel safe enough to speak up. We talk about it as interaction safety. We were actually writing the book around interaction safety, this book. At the same time, they were writing a book about psychological safety. We thought interaction safety was more appropriate for organizations and corporations, but we didn't know that at the time. That's the term we used. But I think that psychological safety has a little, baggage might be too strong, but to go up to your leader or a manager and say, I don't feel psychologically safe, probably send you to the nurse's office and to outside, support. I think what leaders owe people is interaction safety. I'm able to do the interactions that I need in order to be successful in this organization. And therefore you owe me that environment. So for us saying, interaction safety really puts the responsibility on the organization to create the environment that's necessary. And we'll talk a lot more about that as we go through this. We're also going to be doing 2 workshops coming up in the fall. They were earlier this year, but COVID said no, not earlier this year. So they're going to be in the fall. Yes, Jim, I see you raising your hand and cheering. I'm cheering too. Yay! So we are 2 transformational workshops in October. So plenty of time to organize your lives and be there. We hope you'll come. We have room for all. One's going to be a human interaction workshop, which is really around understanding self and interaction with others, understanding about groups and group process and all those things. But it really helps people grow and develop. And it's often the first, and these are all some people be staying residential. These are all workshops where people, live in a community of learners for several days. And the second one is developing the organization and personal self. It's a lab that I developed many, many years ago, sometime in the 80s. And we have done it all over the world and many times, but we haven't done it for the last few years. I'm so glad to bring this back. And thank you, Jim and Marilyn, for making that happen. And it's about really looking at self and who I am and who I want to be. And am I getting what I want out of life? And what am I doing to contribute to getting what I want? And what am I doing to contribute to not getting what I want? And so it's a lot of intra-personal work. It's not as interactive, but it's intra, but we give you a lot of stimulation to look at self and look at who you are and who you want to be and what's going to work for it, which feels perfect coming out of COVID, as all of us have been in our caves or at least been careful. And now we're looking at, okay, if I'm not in my cave or I'm not going to be as sequestered as I've been, even when I'm walking down the street, here's an opportunity to have a lab experience that lets me think about where I want to go and how I'm going to be going forward. So we hope you will join us for those and tell people about it. We want to have a mob. And so please join us for that. And it's going to be an incredible experience. Okay, let's move to our overview.
Great. So just we've done our welcome, we've done our introductions of us, but we want you all to connect. So that's what we're going to do next. And then we're going to talk basically about 2 different aspects of this conversation around interaction safety. One is what we talk about around judging and joining, and what we see as a foundational mindset that really enables interaction safety to occur. So we're going to talk about how do you move from a judging mindset to one that's joining. We'll do some self-assessments, we'll have some small group discussion, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the interaction safety, specifically in kind of the levels that we've identified in terms of how interaction safety or not shows up. Again, a self-assessment, a little bit of small group discussion, and then we'll close with some do's and don'ts in terms of things that support interaction safety and things that get in the way, and closing comments. And we hope to do all of that in another hour and 15 minutes that we have left. So here we are. So Fred, I'll run it to you to get us into some groups.
One of the key things about high-performing teams, about inclusion, about creating a great organization is people connecting with one another. You can't have a high-performing team if everybody's in their silo and everybody's doing their own thing. You'll never get the synergy that a high-performing team needs. When you want to have inclusion is about others and engaging in others, yes, self and others. And it's really important that we have that connection with people so that we can trust them, so we can have the conflicts we need to have or the challenges we need to have with them, and that we are able to grow, be, develop, create together so that we have more together than we could have separately. We have so many clients where everybody is siloed. We have one right now that's very siloed, and they're missing all the synergy that they would have if they connected more and worked across the organization, including working down the organization. So for us, connecting and identifying your partners and being with your partners and having interactions with them and getting to know them and knowing what works for them and how you can partner together is essential. So we are going to give you a few minutes to go into some small groups of 3 or 4, say your name, your organization, and one thing that enables you to feel interaction safety when you are with others. The safety to be able to be yourself, the safety to be able to share your ideas, the safety that allows you to really make the contribution that you can make so that the group has more than they would have if you were not there. And when you do that, come back prepared to answer question number 3, what's that one thing in chat? So we're gonna put you in groups of 3 or 4. We're only gonna do about 6 minutes, so talk fast, but we will see you back here then. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back, thank you, thank you. Let's just hear from a couple of people as you thought about interaction safety or anything else that may have come up in this small group. Just let us hear from 2 people, just get some voices out here so we can hear and learn. Just unmute yourself and talk, that's fine.
Hi.
Hi.
It's nice to see you again. I was here at the last time.
Yay.
It's nice to see a better view than just the background of the wall. There's more action this time. So I think the elements that came out the most from what people have said in our breakout was freedom of expression. So that feeling of the ability to speak up and be respected. That there's a communal kind of trust that's involved, common language, shared understanding, feeling like there's no immediate criticism that's about to be bombarded on our heads, and also knowing something about other people so that we don't feel like there's this like lack of understanding of like what their interrelations or conflicts of interest might be, or what the project is, their contacts, and so on and so forth. So that like background and the baggage that people have when you come in, you feel like you're disbalanced by the lack of knowledge. So yeah, those were those elements that came through.
And I think we're going to have to work hard with remote being so much of many people's lives. How do we get some of that? Some of that you can get remote, and I'm just old fashioned, but periodically, some of that you got to get face to face. And I think it's how do we have a blend? And face-to-face could be once a year. I mean, it doesn't have to be every week. But I just, I keep thinking human beings are social animals. We need contact. Again, you've heard me say this before, if you were here before. If a baby is not touched, a baby will die. Maybe we won't die from a lack of touch, but we'll sure die from lack of recognition or shrivel up and be smaller. And so how do we have that and I'm not sure this screen gives us that touch of that recognition that we need. It can give you some and give you a lot, but I'm not sure it's the only source that we can handle for having some of what we need as human beings, human to human. And thank you for being here again, and thanks for those comments. One more comment, one more person, unmute and talk.
So our group was really interesting. 3 of us spoke from a relational kind of place, so that there was a sense of openness and willingness that was conveyed through body language and spoken language and non-material kinds of energetic, relationship, a sense of trust that you were going to be understood and accepted, and then for the third person, it was humor, getting to a place where you could use humor and have a sense of relaxation in the relationship. Stephen Wells gave a really eye-opening response to me, which was patience. And so rather than being focused on the relational aspect, what was coming back, he was speaking from a place of what's in, presumably, in all of our control, our choice range. So that was really enlivening for me to hear.
Yeah, I love that. I love the patience. And, you know, people have talked about the need for silence, that I can be with somebody and we can have silence, and that silence actually pulls us together versus apart. So thanks for all those comments. We're going to keep moving. Judith?
Sure. So Veronique, if you put the deck up. So we're going to do a couple of things where I'm going to talk a little bit about, and we're going to engage around some of the foundations for interaction safety, which is about how do we move to more joining. And in fact, Sarah, what you just talked about, as well as Tammy, really speak to some of the elements of joining, but we're going to kind of work this together. So the next slide, if you would, Veronique, is I'd like you to think of a time when you felt someone was interacting with you in a judging way. And just put in the chat, what were your thoughts, your feelings, reactions, just whatever came up for you. So it could be at work, it could be at home, it could be something that happened when you were 6 years old. Doesn't have to be something recent, but just put in the chat some words that kind of, you know, you think about either those thoughts, those feelings, or reactions that you had when you thought someone was really interacting with you in that judging way. So we go. All right. I'm gonna try to kind of capture some of these. Confusion, right, wrong. I go quiet. Anxious, great. Defensive, great. Not great, but yeah. They're concerned I maybe did something wrong, or I feel small. Disconnected. Thought this isn't right. Second guessing. Okay, great. Alone. Yep, judged. When we feel judged, shut down. Okay, worthless. Alienated. All right. I wonder, why are they doing this? Frustrated, felt like I wanted to disengage. Okay, all right. So we got this one down. We know how this feels, right? We've probably all felt this in some point, incompetence. So sometimes we take this internally, sometimes we make it external. I might feel hurt. Okay, so now our next slide, we would just for a moment, I'm gonna shift us for a moment, and I want you to think of a time that you felt someone was interacting with you in a joining way. And what were those thoughts, those feelings, reactions? So think of a time when that interaction was, so we got relief, warm, energized, lifted, relaxed, dynamic, great, inspired. You're fast typers, optimistic. Valued, great. Included, heard, okay, enthusiastic, engaging myself more, heard, understood, reassured, excited, call to action, great, stimulated, okay, all right, thank you, empowered. So let me ask you, which organization do you want to be in? The one that you feel confused, you feel quiet, you feel anxious, defensive, you feel small, disconnected, alone, judged, shut down, worthless, or one in which you feel relief, warmth, energized, relaxed, inspired, valued, included, my heart is there, engagement, stimulated, empowered, and more. Anybody have a question about which organization you want to be in? The former gives me ideas to write about, but what is that? Tammy, say so. What is this, Tammy? Decipher what you just wrote.
Basically, that whenever the first part happens, that gives me a bunch of ideas to write about and explore. That's why, you know, for me, it's like things like that. It's just epistemic friction, right? It's just like, okay, what's going on here? But I definitely want to be with the latter, even if the first one gives me ideas.
Well, it makes us have to think about ourselves, right? We have to go and think about what's wrong, you know, what did I do, or what can I do differently? I mean, there's a whole set of things. The other space brings us into a different space, creativity, energetic, maybe kind of more ability to join with somebody else. So Fred and I were at a workshop, just a little kind of origin story on this. Fred and I were doing a workshop with a client, and we were starting a 16-day workshop that was with people from all over the globe. There were like 50 people. We were going to do this strategy work with them. And these are people we had worked with over a period of anywhere from 12 to 18 months. So they were not strangers. And we started the session with a moment of focus. Just a moment. Actually, Veronica, you can get rid of the slide for a moment. We started the session with a moment of just getting grounded into the room and focused. And all of a sudden, I found myself feeling this incredible anxiety. Like, were they going to judge us? You know, were they going to look at everything we said? And you know how you guys sometimes as trainers, we say, that was good, that was bad, give them a grade, and all of that, right? I'm sure some of us have been in a room where that's happened. Or were they going to join us and say, you know, that doesn't exactly fit my organization, but if I twist it this way, or if I turn it this way, I can make it work. And so I got up and I said to everyone as we kind of finished our moment of focus, Fred said, does anybody have anything to say? And I said that I'm worried you're going to judge us or join us. And everybody in the room went like, oh, that's what we do. We judge. That's our culture here, you know, and we're scientists and we judge not only the science, we judge each other. And that kind of opened the doorway to really looking at how do we get more clarity about really starting with the stance of moving to joining instead of judging. And that's kind of how this got born. And ever since then, we've used it in every client system all over the globe, and people have really resonated to this notion about how do we start from a judging point of view or start each other with the joining point of view. So we've kind of got a little graphic that we'll talk for a few minutes about, not a lot of time, just given our time tonight. But when we're in that judging behavior, and you've already talked about this, you know, when I feel judged, I act small or I reinforce and I judge the other in return. But when I feel joined, and our notion about joining doesn't mean I agree with everything the other person says, but I assume the other person has something to offer. And that I start from a place of assuming that there's something I can learn here or get something that can be added to. I give the other the benefit of the doubt. I extend my trust. And when I'm in judging, I withhold that trust and I don't give the person the benefit of the doubt. And so what we find is, and particularly in organizations where people have had a long history with one another, you know, there's that holding on to the past and maybe even labeling, like, I remember what you did, you know, 5 years ago. And it's hard to overcome that. Whereas if I'm in a joining point of view or interactions, I let go of that past. And I think the other thing what we find is when we're in judging, we make it about the person. So if there's a problem in the organization or there's something that comes up, we kind of want to blame and find who's to blame. Versus when we're in joining, it's about the work we're here to do. And we're much more accepting and exploring versus evaluating. The other thing, this organization that we worked with, one of the things, as I said, was a scientific organization, did a lot of Lean Six Sigma work. And in Lean, to find root cause, you ask the questions, 5 whys. So someone may be familiar with the 5 whys. Well, when you're in a judging organization, we do the 5 whos. Who did it, who did it, who did it? Because we want to find out who was the person we can blame and make them be the problem. But when we're in the joining behaviors, we're not going to say, we're going to try to get to that root cause, and we're going to be exploring what are the issues here. So we have, I think that the thing that I think kind of manifests in joining behaviors is this notion about being curious. Like, why do you see it differently? Or how is it that you see it from a different point of view than I do? Versus telling somebody I'm right and you're wrong. So we have a very different kind of energy. I think you've all kind of framed it already. And I think one of the things that we find is that it takes work to move to joining. I know I come from a German Jewish background, and in my family, the first answer was always no. So, and I know that I have that strong judging criteria in me. In fact, Fred and I had like a code where if he wants me really to be open and knows I might go to judging because I'm fearful or whatever, he'll say to me, Judith, I want you to think yes, which is kind of our code, like don't start from a judging place. So in many ways, it takes work. It's hard to not judge. And we need to judge, we need to assess, and I want to differentiate assessing, you know, performance from judging people and judging interactions. You know, you can fire somebody and do it in a way where they feel joined with or they feel judged. Like I'm the smallest worthless person, or, you know, I didn't do everything I needed to do and I can learn from this. So this is one of the things that I think we really kind of moved to. And when I'm in a joining mode, I recognize that none of us is as smart as all of us, and we all have something to offer. When I'm in that judging mode, I probably think that I'm the smartest person in the room and you're going to do it my way. Or at least that kind of I have the bigger voice. And hopefully people are moving more to joining, but we think this is foundational as a mindset, and it takes work to do that. We had one leader we worked with, and then I'm going to move us to an activity. We had one leader we worked with said to Fred, you know, I judge, that's what I do. And Fred says, okay, then judge faster and get it over with. So, you know, we may need tricks to do that kind of help us move ourselves, because we might have that proclivity that the first response is a no, or the first response is I've got the answer, or the first response is let's find the blame. So this to us has been a really important kind of foundational perspective, and it takes a new muscle to really move ourselves in this direction. You know, we could be wrong. We might want to do joining behaviors and the person we are working with is really not adding up to that. But you know, we're wrong a lot of times when we judge and we don't join. So giving the benefit of the doubt, letting go of the past, extending that trust really enables us to be much more creative, much more productive, and much more positive in terms of our possibilities. So I'm going to move us as an activity we're going to do with this, and we're going to hear some responses, going to get you some groups to talk about it, and then we'll have a chance to kind of ruminate about this. So Veronique, I think
let's go back one slide.
Okay.
The thing for me and for us is that we were at a client, and he came in and he was like, you know, distraught. So what's going on? He says, I got to do a presentation today. I said, okay, and? He said, well, when I do a presentation, it's going to be like 20, 25 of his peers in the auditorium. They're going to be looking for what's wrong. They're going to be looking for, did I misspell something? Did I have a burger dot in the wrong place? Did I have a da-da-da-da? And so his stomach was upset all night. He was upset all night. He was worried all night. He was like, this is like a bad experience that I got to go through to share this concept with my colleagues. And what struck me around that is if people are thinking they're going into a judging situation, are they giving their most expansive thinking, or are they going to play it safe? And I think again and again in our judging organization, which is common, it's global, everywhere we've done this, judging has been a strong part of how organization cultures are. I'm not going to give you my crazy, wild, almost half thought through idea that we know leads to creativity, leads to innovation. Innovation doesn't come from people playing it safe. Innovation comes from people going outside of the boundary, even of this little box that I'm in. And so how do we have that environment? A lot of times people will come before a leadership group or a management team or the board, and they're going to do a presentation, and oh my goodness, how do I make the safest presentation I can do? And we don't allow for the thinking and the creativity. And given the times that we're living in, given that everything is kind of upside down and inside out, and everything is in a major time of transformation, everybody trying to play it safe, organizations are losing. How much are organizations losing? Because they're judging organizations, and because they're judging organizations, I'm not going to give you that wild and crazy idea I have. I'm not even going to give you the stretch idea I have. I'm going to give you the safe idea that I have, so I get in the least trouble and you appreciate me. I remember Judith was talking about being with a group of leaders once, and somebody came in and did a presentation, and then they left, and she said, so did y'all like that presentation? They said, we loved it. They said, but why didn't you tell the people when they were in the room? All your reaction to them was, did you forget this? Did you think about this? Let me show you I'm smarter than your presentation. And none of you said, wow, that was really good and that was really helpful. So what we train people to think small, to be careful, to bring it in and not take it out. And we live in a world now where we got to take it out. We live in a world now where the old rules, the old ways of being are not going to get us where we want to go. And so how do we create that joining organization, and that organization where people are thinking expansively versus narrowly as they interact with others? And how do I react in a way that people don't experience me as being critical because they're thinking outside of the box, they're thinking more creatively? So we really think this is a key to unlocking many, many, many organizations and many interactions. Next slide. So we like you, and we'll explain to you how to do this. We're going to ask you on this scale to mark where we are. Want to talk about that?
Yeah, so if you want to annotate on the slide, at the top of your screen, you should see view options. If you click there, and then you can see the button that says annotate. And from your annotate screen, you should be able to select a stamp. So there's, I think, 6 stamps to choose from. So you can place a stamp wherever you feel like you are feeling when you're judging and joining others.
And it's one scale, you're putting 1 mark on it, and it's going from 0 to 5 plus joining, 0 to 5 minus judging. And Vero, could you say again how to do the stamp?
Yeah, at the top of your screen, you should see view options. And if you click on that, then you'll see annotate. And from the annotate window, you should be able to select a stamp. So some people are already using it.
I don't seem to have this.
If you don't have it, just send Vero a private message and give her your number, and then she can put you on the scale.
Yeah.
Wow, nice. Just take about 10 more seconds if you haven't already done it. I love that +5 on joining. All right, that's company. All right, yay, yay, yay. Okay, let's move to the next.
Fred, before we do that, make sure you write down your scores on a piece of paper, because you're going to talk about them in your small group. So if you can remember what you just put down, make sure that that was when, how much do you judge or join? Okay.
So to what extent do you judge or join others when they disagree with you? So let's do stamps. And again, as Judith just said, let's record it somewhere for you. When they disagree with you. All right, another 10 seconds. Good, thank you. Great, wonderful. Okay, we're going to move to a third question. To what extent is your business function, or wherever you work or wherever you're consulting to, what is the culture like there regarding judging and joining? I see that +5 judging. All right, I see a +5 joining, yay. All right, wow. So a lot of judging 3, 4s, and 5s out there. This is what we need to change. It's hard to be a high-performing organization or have people do their best work when we got judging 3, 4, and 5 out there. And I love the 5 and the +5 and the +4 in joining and the 3s. Okay, just a couple of comments, and then we're going to put you in small groups to talk about this. Make sure you wrote down your answers. Vero, can we see the number question 1 and then look at question 2? Is that possible? Can we see the scores or not?
There's scores? Yeah, just give me one quick second.
Sorry.
No problem.
So if we look at to what extent are you judging and joining others, or what extent are you judging and joining kind of in a normal situation? You put a score down there for the first question. The second question, okay, so you can see it, thank you. So you can see that. Now let's go to the second one, when disagreement happens. You'll see when disagreement happens, almost all of us move closer to judging. So this is profound in many, many ways, because we all know that mixing it up, diversity is going to bring about some mixing it up. Not talking about physical hitting people, but exchanging ideas. And if when we mix it up, when people disagree or people exchange or people engage with one another, we go closer to judging. It may go from a +5 joining to a +4 joining. But that difference sends a signal to others. I don't like you as much as I liked you when you were not disagreeing with me. And I don't like you as much as before we start mixing it up, our ideas. And it might be just I raise an eyebrow. It might be I step back a little bit. It might be just I don't speak as quickly around something. Just because as people interact with you, they're watching you, they're seeing what you're doing and how you're responding, especially if they think they disagree with you, especially if you're in a leadership position or some authority or some expertise around them, that they will see that as that person doesn't like me as much, that person doesn't agree with me as much, that person doesn't appreciate me as much as they did when I was agreeing with them. Which means that I then have to make a choice. Do I want to be, quote unquote, like less, or do I want to make this point? For a lot of people, they're going to say, I don't need this fight. I don't need this disagreement. I don't want that disapproval. I don't want the person to like me less. And so over time, or even the first time, I may stop. I may hedge what I'm saying. I may not be as clear and direct as I can be, or I might not even say it, because I don't want to lose the connection, because sometimes when you like me less or engage with me less or appreciate me less, I feel like I'm losing the connection. We've done this around the globe, as Judith said, almost everywhere. 95% of the people get less joining when there's disagreement. That is a global problem and puts us in a situation. It's a problem inside organizations. Periodically, there are people who go more joining when somebody disagrees because they become curious. I'm curious about what's happening. I'm curious about what you said. Why do you see it that way? That's not how I saw it. But that's a small percentage of people. The overwhelming majority of people will, at least their eyebrow will go up. At least they will take a breath on that. So we want to share that with you, because I think it talks about what we need to do if we want to create these collaborative organizations, create greater partnership, high-performing organizations where people can bring innovation to the organization. Innovation means I'm going to have conflict. How do we allow ourselves to work through that in a way that we're joining throughout the process and not becoming less joining or even judging in the process?
And the only thing I'd add, Fred, is that one of the things we talked a lot about, we say we want diversity of thought. And yet, if I bring a different point of view, if I'm judged, I'm going to be much less willing to bring that difference to the table. And so it shows up in a lot of different ways. And there's been some great conversation in the chat as well that I just want to kind of highlight if people are seeing too. So I think this notion about how and in the Zoom world, people haven't had that chance to get that cup of coffee to build up. So when I know people, I often will give them more of the benefit of the doubt than if I don't know you. And so if we're so focused on task, the question becomes, how do we build that connection to really enable us to have the trust that we need to really go quickly and not second guess everybody. Okay,
let's move to the questions. So in the small groups, we'd like you to talk about, share your scores from the assessment. What are 2 behaviors you exhibit when you are in a judging mode? 2 behaviors you exhibit when you're in a joining mode? And what can you do to move to more joining? All the time, and especially when there's conflict. So we're going to put you in some small groups for a few minutes and let you talk about that. Then we'll come back here, some comments. And then we have another concept that we want to share with you when you come back. Welcome back, welcome back. So like last, I know you're putting your reactions and thoughts about actions related to greater joining in chat. So if you could do that, that would be wonderful, 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 wonderful. I know not enough time, believe me, I appreciate that. Let's just hear from a couple of people again. Just a thought or reflection around judging and joining. How's your organization around that? Maybe something about your score, maybe about your scores that went from normal situation to people in disagreement. Let's just hear from two people.
I don't think
I would
people
go-
have all come back yet.
Say again, Stephen?
I don't think people have all come back yet, or has everyone come back?
Close, pretty close.
Okay, sorry.
So
Carry
why
on.
don't you take your turn since you're talking?
No, I'm good.
I can go. I was in the same group.
Go.
So we shared some of the behaviors when we judge and we join. And on the judging side, part of us were disengaged, were withdrawing from the situation. And other people in the group were being provocative and on the offensive. And the joining has to do a lot of like excitement. There's a lot of stimulation. And the question that I left the group with, but we were cut off, is what do you do when you have a group that thrives on the kind of contentious, confrontation to find the meat of the issue, and you have people in the group that withdraw when that happens? How do you create an environment for that?
Right. I think there are lots of answers. I mean, what's clear to me is that we need to get back to basics and say, let's create some ground rules for our group. How are we going to function? How are we going to function when things are well and smooth? How are we going to function when we see things differently? How are we going to handle conflict? I think we've moved towards not doing those basic things of creating what used to be called ground rules for our group, but I think we have to start getting more explicit about what are going to be our operating norms, and do that before you have the issue. So you're establishing the ground rules, and then when something comes up, you can look inside of that framework. Let's hear from one more person before we move.
I can go ahead.
Please.
The social contract concept, I think, is a formidable idea in order to make sure everybody's on the same page for how to treat each other. But the other two elements that came from our group was the idea of remembering that everything is a storytelling situation. So the story I'm telling myself, the story you think I'm telling myself, the story I think you're telling yourself, the story everyone is in, and starting to realize that it's not really about us. Often the arguments are more about the stories not overlapping properly, and that there needs to be a conversation about how we get our expectations or the ideas that we have about the situation more on par with each other's narratives, so it doesn't mean that your narrative has to be like mine, but that it at least has to coincide somewhere, like a good Photoshop, like
I love that.
and also seeing them as opportunities to grow, because diversity and heterogeneous environments often are the environments where we have the opportunity to learn something. So by seeing that, and in not so pleasant or a tense engagement is actually a way for you to gain something from the start, means that no matter how it ends up, there is an actual place for you to win out of that situation, is already positive as an experience. You haven't even started the conversation and you're like, I have something to learn. I have a positive to get out of this. It really changes the dynamic of how you approach it. And it helps the other person not feel as defensive, because then you're also indicating that I've already won. I don't even have to worry about like how this is going to turn out. I'm going in with a playful, demeanor and not an attacking one. I'm not disengaging, but I'm also not attacking. So it creates something that's maybe not expected from the other individual and invites them to also grow and learn from the process.
No, I like that. I like the notion of having a place to win, or a place to join, or a place to feel like I'm a part of this and I belong. I mean, I think all those things are critical factors for people to be able to do their best work and shine and be great. Okay, we're going to move ourselves to the last concept we want to share tonight, which is interaction safety. Next slide. Interaction safety creates an environment through intentional actions, we need to be deliberate about it, and behaviors that encourages reasonable risk-taking, sharing ideas, and creating an inclusive, collaborative workplace. It is an environment that makes people feel safe enough to share not just their best ideas, but their still information ideas. We were very deliberate about talking about safe enough to soar, safe enough to do it. I'm in downtown Troy, New York. walking across the walkway, going across the street with all those yellow lines, doesn't guarantee me safety. But it's the experience where it's safe enough, and I still have to be smart about how I cross the street, even though all the signs are up and the lights are flashing. So safe enough in our interactions, safe enough. And as I said before, those still information ideas, how do we get those out? That's where the brilliance is. That's where the kernel is. That's going to have us be different and have us be able to do something that we hadn't thought about before. When interaction safety exists, people know they will not be penalized, ostracized, demoted, or made small, discounted, or shunned because of their thoughts, contributions, and conversations. Once people know that and they feel safe enough to do that, then when there are no boundaries, we can go far. Got to be respectful. Got to acknowledge the other person. Got to make sure that I am presenting myself in a way that shows that respect. And what's in my mind? What am I thinking? What are the possibilities? Where can we go from here? What can we dream about that we're not dreaming about, or thinking about that we're not thinking about? And COVID-19, for all of its bad stuff, that pause that it created gives us an opportunity to do a reset as far as we're going forward. And a lot of people are doing a reset about their lives, at minimum their work life, but for a lot of people, their entire life. And we're going to talk more about it. Judith?
Sure. So I'm so torn here because I'm sitting and looking at the chat, and there's some great questions and conversations, and I would love to be there, but I'm going to be here. So I want to just talk a little bit about the action safety so that we can think about how you move an organization, or where am I and what do I need to do to protect myself, and move to the next slide. So there are 4 levels of interaction safety that we've identified. There may be more, but these are the 4 we've identified, and we find that people can kind of see where their organization is. The first one is where you're kind of on your own. There's no focus on interaction safety, no attention, there's no policies, people never say the words. It's a judging organization, as some of you have talked about here. And people actually walk on eggshells. And so you keep your head down, you stay small, and it's a culture that often is people are ignored or hazed, or there's sarcasm or digs. They're the mean jokes, all of that is part of the organization. Now, the thing is, people often will then feel like they have to hide, and that the best thing you can do is just stay out of harm's way, or know, like where you don't want to be. Now, sometimes people say, well, why would you stay in an organization like this? And it was interesting. I was doing some work at Stanford at the business school, and a man had worked at Facebook, and he said, this was my organization. He said, but I stayed because I was doing cool projects. I got to do some tech and some work that I'd never get to do anyplace else. So it's kind of sounds like high school. Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, sounds like high school. So there are times where people, like, you have to be tough, and you want to make sure that, it just kind of rolls over you. And many of us will stay in those environments if they're engaged in some work that they like to do, or they don't feel like they have choices, or, not everybody has choice in terms of their work environment. So that's kind of like the no focus. Nobody would ever talk about it. In fact, if you talked about wanting interaction safety, somebody would probably laugh at you and demean you even more. But that's kind of like our level 1. It's interesting, the person who wrote the foreword to our book, Hal Yo, who is the CEO of a family-owned, $3 billion family-owned business, one of the things that he strived for in his vision has been zero safety issues. And he believes in terms of physical safety, but he also believes that he wants a culture in which you're going to have zero challenges around interaction safety, and actually a positive environment around that. So it's possible, and he sees it as something to achieve. So the next level, which is level 2, is where there's lip service. And many of us have been in those organizations. There's little focus. The organization might say something about, we want to create a positive environment. It might even be signs on the walls, but policies exist, but there's no real action. And so you're still judging others. There's still a lack of trust. People might agree in public, but they disagree in private. So you would never disagree in a meeting, for example. And you really have to calculate in terms of whether or not it's too risky to respond. So So you might engage when it relates to you, like it's a project you're on or something, but if somebody else is, you're going to stay out of the mess. So you're really just looking out for yourself. And this is an organization where people might be promoted who are creating an unsafe environment or harassing environment, and it's because perhaps they're, you know, a good performer, or they're bringing one of your salespeople that's bringing in a lot of sales, and everybody might know that they're a harasser. Everybody might know that they're creating this hostile environment, but they're still going to be promoted or receiving support. So there's very little focus on interaction safety, very little focus on creating that kind of environment. Again, the organization has lip service. You know, maybe they'll send out the employee surveys. We were in one organization where it was terrible, but it was definitely a lip service organization where they sent out the employee surveys, you know, the annual survey, and it was, they talk about, you know, being anonymous, et cetera. And then the manager goes to somebody in the group and said, why did you say that in the survey? So you know what happened around interaction safety after that. People were like, I'm never filling out that survey. And of course, their numbers were very high because everybody lied on the survey because they didn't want to be the one whose manager came to them and said, you know, whoa, what are you doing here? So that's the kind of interaction safety kind of lip service. When we move to the third level, it's kind of like we have islands of safety. So there's some focus, there's some preventative measures, there's some policies that the organization puts in force towards supporting that interaction safety. And you know which colleagues you can trust. So it's kind of like, our team is good, I don't know about that other team. So in many ways, people might find like, I've gotten my people, you know, but those other people in the other department, even if we're working on a joint project, I'm not so sure I can trust them. Some leaders are actively doing that. So, you know, you might have a cluster of leaders that you say, that's the leader I want to work for, but that other department I don't. And you have to test because you don't know who's safe and who's not. But the norm that people are developing is beginning to listen and to see others' point of view. So it's much less a judging culture, but there's just some trepidation about where is it safe and how safe it is. And once I get to know you, you know, I'll be able to then bring you into that fold, you know, and feel like it's more safe. So I'm beginning to look at not only for myself, but also for some others. And I think one of the things about this is you can see that the regression, that there's a desire to move in this direction, that there's conversations about it. It's just that some leaders may be hesitant. You still have some old line leaders who are kind of thinking about, you know, the way to be is to be creating fear in the organization instead of creating trust, but that's not the norm. And we're seeing that the organization is moving in that direction. So you've got the islands of safety. Now, hopefully those islands start bridging together. And then the last on this kind of continuum is that it begins to become a way of life. So there's a lot of focus, there's proactive, it's part of it, you know, every policy and practice, which from orientation or pre-hiring to the life cycle in an organization. The policies really are supportive of people feeling able to be joined, speaking up. They get the benefit of the doubt, trust is assumed. You know, in different perspectives are invited in. The norm is to work through conflict and differences, but with support and caring. And I think one of the things that this shows up a lot in terms of difference is in, when you have interaction safety, when somebody is being vetted to join the organization, once they've been vetted and you're in a level 4 organization, the assumption is they're a great hire, they're gonna do great things. When you're in a level 1 organization, even if they've been vetted by HR and they've been interviewed, et cetera, they get re-vetted again. Like, is this a good hire? Is this not a good hire? So there's no trust in the decision-making of others. So there's a lot of waste because we're wasting our time re-vetting people or not assuming that we can really enable that person to contribute fully. And so again, you know, this is kind of like, not all organizations are here. We don't see a lot of organizations that are here, but we see some organizations that are clearly trying to move in that direction. So leaders get supported and recognized for their ability to create that safety, not just for technical skills. You know, that's an important skill set that's seen as part of what's needed. And what you do is you have the freedom to engage, the freedom to be wrong, as Fred said, the freedom to bring half-baked ideas. So all of that becomes an important part of it. And as you can see, these 4 levels kind of support one another and you move from one to the other. It's really hard to just jump from no focus to a way of life. And a lot of organizations, people want to do that, but that's not really possible. And again, it's feeling safe enough. Now, the hard part is when new people come in, often we bring our baggage about what's possible. So you have to do a lot of work to make sure people understand what that really looks like and what that really means. So let me stop there. Let's see if there's any comments or whatever that you want to put into the chat about the 4 levels, and then we're going to give you a little activity to do with that. So any comments or reactions? Are you seeing this in your organizations? Where would you say your organization is? And I know that's probably part of what our chat is going to be about as well. I find this happens when people have worked together for a long time, but there's little room for real growth. Sounds, yep. Tammy, you raised your hand. Go for it. I always love to hear your voice.
I guess whether it's an organization or, you know, any situation where, you know, this judging joining ambience happens, I wonder what can be done in order, if you're like up the green one and you're like way of life, curious, engaged in joining and whatnot, but other people are stuck on their own. How do you help them make that bridge upwards to realize that they don't have to tell themselves that story, that they can, you know, the dynamic can be seen in a different way, help them get out of the judging space.
Yeah. You know, I mean,
and not feel judged, you know, like I'm wondering, like, because there's us, but there's also, you know, the person we're interacting with. So even if we work on ourselves, the other person may not be ready to, and if it takes 2 to tango, right? So I'm just curious what your take on that would be.
Yeah. And you know, I think I love your question. I think there's 2 things here. One of the things that I think is how we feel as individuals, and then there's also the environment and the culture that we're a part of. And what do we reinforce and support? So, you know, for us, some of this is systemic, but I also think that one of the things that we need to do with each other is to get, like Fred said about, you know, group norms, but explicit contracts. Like, what, you know, when we've been with groups, we might say, what do people need to feel safe here to really bring their full voice in themselves? So sometimes even having that, and absolutely, Andy, leadership is critical to start creating that environment. It doesn't just happen because you say you want it to happen. And I think some of it is we have to really support people in a way and even call out the fact that, you know, it seems like there's a lot of judging behavior. What does joining look like? So I think some of this is our engaging with each other about what does it feel like? Because what may not feel safe for you. What feels like I can join may not be what you feel like you can join. Or maybe it's knowing I'm going to have to judge until I, you know, how I move myself to really feeling like I cannot judge other people. And, you know, I mean, like, you know, Fred and I worked together 35 years. We didn't start supporting each other right away. It took some time to learn from each other about what we need. I think somebody had their hand up and I just lost it. Oh, no, Naomi. I don't know if I said that right.
Noemi, you almost got it right. No worries. I'm sharing a half-baked idea here, just modeling what you're talking about, which is a great. That concept really, I find it really strong. I like it. But I think what I want to bring is more about the ground rules, because I had heard before, yeah, setting ground rules is the way, and it sounds more easy said than done. I really find it, even me, like who knows about it, I'm just like, how would you support, like what are your tricks or to break that ice and really bring ground rules as a practice, you know, because I think it could be a big culture change for a lot of us, you know, like.
Yes. I had 2 thoughts, Fred, two thoughts. One is, I think the last session we talked about 4 keys. And one of the keys that we also feel is important is creating a sense of safety for yourself and your team members. And even just saying to people, what do you need? You know, what is that behavior? What does that look like? What does that mean? And really having discussions and getting people to think about, this is what I need to feel safe. This is what I'm willing to do to create safety for others. And as we hear each other, we start co-creating what that is and how we're going to manage that. But it's not a one-time process. It's not a one-time conversation, because those old patterns are so deeply enmeshed in many organizations and in our own lives. I mean, I think the big thing that people talked about, which we didn't talk about, this is one of the things DOPS does a lot of work about, is how we judge ourselves and how we then, may project that onto other people. So, so there's it's the self-talk as well as it is what we need with one another. But I think opening up that dialogue is just a critical element. And I think as we begin to talk about safety, we can also begin to create it. Fred, I don't know, you looked like you were going to say something.
I agree with what you said, Judith. I think an entry point might be to say, as a team is together, you know what? I keep feeling like we could be better than we are. I feel like we could do better work than we're doing. I feel like we could be working better together. Does anybody else feel that way, or is it just me? Now, if nobody said, no, we're all fine, then you know you're in a minefield. Be careful. But there might be other people who say, you know what? I agree. What might we do? And then I think you can say, I've been learning some things that people have been talking about that really helps teams be high performing. Maybe we can have a meeting and talk about some things we can do to be better and improve. So I would ease into it. And so I wouldn't say, y'all, we're screwed up. I would start off by, what do y'all think? This is what I think. Most people want to be better. Most people want to do better. And if you're feeling it, others are feeling it. Don't think you're feeling it and nobody else is. Everybody else is fine and you're the only one not fine. That's almost never the case. There's always at least one other voice or more than one. So ease into it and then say, okay, so if we're going to be that better team, what are some things we need to start doing differently in order for us to be that team? And then you can start introducing some ground rules and some Okay, we're going to move us because we're running out of time. We have some scales we want you to respond to. We're not going to go back to any more small groups, obviously, because we only have a few minutes. But let's go through the protocol for doing a stamp, and let's do some stamps.
Yeah, so again, top of your screen, you should see view options. Click on annotate, and then you can select your stamp.
How come we're seeing names this time?
Sorry about that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Interaction safety has increased.
I appreciate that comment. So to what extent do you feel safe enough to speak up in your workplace? Just note your response, note others. We're going to keep moving for the sake of time. Let's go to the next question. To what extent do you feel safe enough to speak up in your family, immediate and extended life? What degree do you feel safe enough to speak up in your family scenario, whatever family means to you? Your name's not going to appear, so you can actually do a stamp.
No, I think whatever she did removed the annotation capacity for some of us. Oh, no, it came back. Okay.
Back, good. And again, if somebody wants to do a stamp and you can't get it, just send her a.
It came back. Try it again, Nancy. Try it again because I didn't have it and now it's back.
To what extent do you feel safe enough to speak up in your family life? And for us, on all these scales, 8, 9, and 10 is high performance. 8, 9, and 10 is goodness. So if you're not 8, 9, and 10, there's an opportunity. Ms. Pryor, I wish you had more time to talk more about that. We're going to go to one more scale, and then we're going to move to close. To what extent do you feel safe enough to speak up with your friends? Speaks to why they're friends, huh?
Right. If they're low, we might have to rethink what our friendships.
I love those scores. We need to have those scores throughout our lives, not just with friends. What would the world be like if people felt that on all their interactions? God, that would be a blessing.
And when we spent, I mean, Stephen said to an extrovert, it often doesn't matter. I think speak up means we're honest, we're authentic. I mean, it's not just I can talk. It's really about that level of honesty, authenticity, heartfelt, you know, that we're not triggered, that we're really willing to engage, or if we are triggered, we're willing to raise it.
Well, we're going to move it. So if you want this deck, or I think we're sending out this deck, so you'll get a copy to see it. Just 2 questions. We're obviously not going to have time to talk about them here. What blocks you from feeling safe enough to speak up more? And what can you do to create more interaction safety for yourself? So what's blocking you, and then what can you do to more empower yourself to speak up more? Next slide. Again, you can get the deck. And then just some easy do's and don'ts. We talked about joining, we talked about judging and the do's and don'ts. Yes, and we all know that versus yes, but. Encouraging versus belittling, et cetera, initiating versus holding back. But, you know, there's some things that we can do and we can introduce, talk about those ground rules for your team. There's some things we can introduce to our teams and to our associates to around some behaviors that help organizations be higher and higher performing.
You know, Fred, I would just also add, I mean, and also I think for us to be able to be our best selves. So, you know, as we think about the Human Interaction Lab, when we think about DOPS, the developing the organizational and personal self, is, are you being the person you want to be in your work life and in your home life? And I think that's really also part of what interaction safety is about, and judging and joining is, can we live the life we want to live? And not feel like we're just second guessing ourselves or not having fully what we want.
And I want one more slide, and then Marilyn and Jim, I'm going to move it to one of you for closing comments. So again, want to remind you of the workshops that we'll be doing in October. Please join us. We're going to have a good time. We're going to work hard, but we're also going to laugh. So the HI Lab, 16th to the 21st of October. And the DOPS Lab, which is Advanced Personal Growth Lab, from the 16th to the 20th of October. Registry.
Sorry, the DOPS Lab changed my life. So I just want everybody to know it was one of the most powerful things. And I did it with Fred in 1987, and it totally changed my whole life. So come and join us. It's fabulous.
You don't have to change your life, but you might do some enhancements, is what a lab experience might be like.
Change your life, what the hell?
Okay, so let's turn it to Marilyn. Jim, Marilyn?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. This is Marilyn. I'm here with the Center for Human Relations and Community Studies. Thank you all so much for joining and sharing in this discussion in this safe space. And we really appreciate your participation and hope you enjoyed today's presentation. On behalf of the Center, once again, I'd like to thank Fred and Judith. We are truly grateful to have you here with us. I'm delighted to let you know that we may be offering another webinar, but when that, and if that happens, we will let you know. For more information on any upcoming webinars and those 2 workshops that we'd love for you to join us in, being offered in the fall, please visit our website, concordia.ca/CHRCS. And I will be sending a follow-up email with the slides from today's presentation and to let you know when the link will be ready for the presentation from tonight. So once again, thank you so much for joining us. And we always look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks. Be careful. Be safe out there. Great. Thank you.
Everyone, take care of yourselves.